Hi, I just want to talk about how I see the ability for our culture to be so adamant about sex and sex roles. One of the books I read, and this is basically called Hermaphrodites and the Medical Invention of Sex. It's a very detailed book, and it was written at a very intellectual level. So some people would probably find it difficult, but it is very informative, and it basically refers to the idea that men and women in our roles in society and a culture have a civilization, that especially Western civilization, um, inheritance and the ability to pass wealth from one generation to another is primarily through the males. In some societies, like some Native American cultures, wealth was passed through the matriarch, the female line, from daughter to daughter. Um, but in Western civilization, in Europe, this was not true. And so, in order to make sure only males had wealth given to them, they made sure through ways to tell if a person was a male. Well, they knew that a lot of babies were ambiguous. So doctors were learning or being asked to make a determination. And the best they could do was, give the best guess, their best guess. If the child looked male, acted male, um, had male looking parts, they're going to be called a male, obviously. But sometimes grossly deformed female genitalia can look like male. And these children, maybe even later on, developed breasts and didn't quite act male, always acted female more, and were not looking like the gender that they were supposed to be. And this was a lot of confusion. Um, in order to avoid this, they would assign the person a gender that visually looked like they would fit into the best. So a person that always, was raised as a male could lose their inheritance if they started becoming feminine looking or having a feminized puberty or didn't masculinize from whatever intersex condition would cause that. Now in our society, we really want to relate to each other immediately as if they're a boy, if they're a girl. And that is done right now by doctors. Doctors can really tell a lot of times that a child is not, quote, normal. Usually under examination when they're cleaning up the baby after birth. And these are normal hospital births. And they're the ones that are going to decide if this child is going to be reared as a male or female. Now sometimes the doctors will talk to the parents and the parents will give their input, and sometimes if the child has enough male looking phallus and testicles or something that could be descended later, because all babies don't have testicles when they're born, that are descended, that is. And so they will try to utilize the child as being male instead of female. But in cases of like micro penises or things that just aren't there like they should be, it's easier to do the surgery to make it look female. And because of studies done by people like John Money and others, they said, if you nurture the child, they'll grow up female, thinking they're female, and the surgery will be a success. And this is not true. It's not always true anyway. And a lot of times the child is still going to be whatever it is in the brain. And that's why I have read this book brain sex, and it talks about how the brain's formed, how hormones and that the mother has, that the baby has, or that other influences in the environment can push a person one way or the other into being more masculinized, more feminized, or having less masculinizing ability, since female is the default mode for the fetus. The gonads have to be turned into male gonads. So if the process is interrupted, then or incomplete because of hormones that the mother is taking or medication, or that the baby has or is not able to produce, or there's receptors in the baby's body are not accepting, let's say, testosterone, then the child is going to appear more feminine. And when babies are born, you can't really ask them if they're a girl or a boy from their mind, so it takes time for this to develop. Usually about 4 or 5 years of age, a child really starts telling you one way or the other. Now, if you're chose to be male like I was, and then not allowed to express your female abilities that were natural, then you start rebelling, and that's what I did. And then you're forced into this role. And when Western civilization wanted to rear boys so they could pass on the name, pass on the wealth from the father, there was a financial cause to this. And a lot of the people pushed the medical profession to prove whether a person's a male or female. Now, I found something interesting that the Torah, the Jewish book of law, had similar problems when they were passing on wealth. And there is a scripture there that says that if a child is of an determined gender, that and their siblings, and they're fighting over who this undetermined person, how they were going to inherit at the point of the death of the father, for instance. If it was a girl, that they got money from the estate to help them till they got married. And if it was a boy, they would get the estate, and the boys would have to split it and or share it. Now, if one sibling says this child is a boy, and the girl says we don't see him as a girl, he gets the boy's share, and the boys are saying no, that's a girl, she gets the girl's share. The law said that they would get, if that child was caught in a predicament where other siblings were determining what the sex was because they didn't want to share their, it'd be taken out of their share, then the lawmaker would say that the child got both the male inheritance and the female inheritance, which I found was pretty interesting. But this just shows that this has been a problem for thousands of years, and our society still has a problem with, even in sports, if a woman is trying to compete and she's considered a male, all of a sudden she could be stripped of her title. And I'd like to talk about that in another video, but the main thing I wanted to say and to get a point across is that the idea of sex and gender is as much a financial one, and it's a financial problem I've dealt with, because it's the way society wants to view me and anyone out there that is gender variant. And I like to encourage anyone to not feel like they're less than a person because they feel gender variant, that things were forced on us, and this is the way society decided to be. And be educated and just keep trying. I just want to encourage you, and I'll end that as that.